Well, that was a mic drop moment. We haven't even started yet. Good evening, everyone. My name is Ben Smith. I'm the pastor here at High Lakes Christian. It's great to have you with us. I see a lot of familiar faces and quite a lot that aren't very familiar. But we just want to welcome you tonight and say that there's lots of cake left. So you're already a disappointment to me that you haven't consumed all of that cake. And some of you are saying, I don't want to spoil my dinner. And I'm saying, you never know what might happen between now and dinner. So, life is short. Eat dessert first, right? Will you bow with me for a word of prayer as we get started tonight? Lord, we're just grateful to you for your son Jesus and for your word. It gives us a constant and never-changing relationship with you, Lord, that we can stand on, and we just give you praise for that. Thank you for your love for us, for the grace that you give us in him, Lord. And tonight, as we talk about some of these things, we just pray your Spirit would be here to guide our conversation. And Lord, we're excited about the possibilities of what you have in store for this community. And we just pray, Father, that we would want what you want. So Lord, we just pray you'd make your will known and clear tonight as we start this conversation and talk through kind of the interest that's here, Lord. And we ask these things in Jesus' name. Amen. Amen. So the purpose of tonight is really, as the card that you've probably seen, the purpose of tonight is really to gather interest. Obviously, we want to give some information, but we also want to gather some interest and kind of gauge what the interest level is for this in the community. And so it's always a question mark kind of in the community. We hear a lot of things, we have private conversations with people, but to actually see people show up and have enough interest in something like this to come to an evening like this is very telling. And so this is a good response. This is a good response of people who are obviously, interested. So I'm going to emphasize this throughout the night, but this is interest gathering. This is not promise making, okay? And I want to make that very, very clear. That's one of the things our church leadership has talked about for a while, is one of the fears of having a kind of a town hall meeting like this is creating an expectation that we cannot fulfill, okay? So we're not here to make promises that we can't make good on, okay? So what we're talking about tonight is what kind of interest in the community is there for a Christian school? And that's what we want to know, is what the interest level is for that. Not necessarily make promises that it's going to happen this fall or it's going to happen next fall or whatever it is. We just want to know, if we build it, will you come? Right? And so that's what we want to know. As you know, there are really no alternatives, no educational alternatives in South County to the public school system, okay? And so South Deschutes County, North Klamath County, I think there may be even potential clear out into the desert, into the Silver Lake area. And I'm just curious, I don't think anybody's here from out there tonight, but if you have friends that are out there, tell them about this, and if you think they're interested, for sure. So, but the church and myself just have a huge burden right now to see a healthy education environment born in La Pine. And so we want to see young people in a healthy education environment. We want to see young people get a quality education, first of all, but we also have a passion to see young people get a Christ-centered education, okay? So this isn't just about reading, writing, and arithmetic. We have a passion, obviously, for kids to know Jesus and to understand the Bible and to have a Christian worldview. And for those of you that don't know what a worldview is, it's a pair of glasses that you put on that you see the world through. And the majority of even Christian people in the U.S. don't have a Christian worldview. And teaching that worldview, how to think theologically and how to think as a child of God about all the issues that are confronting our culture right now is important to us. And we want to start teaching young people how to do that, okay? So we want a Christ-centered education. We want an education that affirms the Christian worldview. We want Christian morality as well as family values being taught to young people, and that's important to us. So that's the need that we see in the community. We see a need for that. And the churches are doing that. We're doing that with Sunday school and other Christian education programs. There's some after-school programs that are doing some of that. I saw Don Manning and his wife, and they run the after-school Good News Club. Those are great options, and those are great opportunities. But there's nothing like young people being able to be immersed in that basically 5 days a week, which would be amazing. So that's kind of the need. Let's talk about possible school format options. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to give you kind of an overview of a bunch of stuff tonight, and then we're going to open it up for questions. And notice I said questions and not questions and answers, because I don't have that many answers. I want to hear your questions, but to be honest with you, we're really at the front end of this thing saying, okay, what could this look like? So we have questions ourselves, but we want to know what questions you guys are asking too. So here's a couple of possible school format options. The first format would be a full-time, 5-day-a-week Christian school that would operate basically on a regular school day schedule. So, your kids go to school at 8 or whatever time in the morning, get off at 3 in the afternoon, or however that works out. So some of the pros that we see to that, obviously, is the convenience of schedule for working families, right? It's nice to not have to have daycare certain days of the week and so forth. So there's obviously a lot more convenient that way than having a part-time school option. We want to also see, obviously, excellent instruction. It's going to follow a typical school day schedule and those kinds of things, which would be great. The major drawback to it, if we could go to the cons really quickly here, the major drawback to it is cost. Obviously a 5-day-a-week program is going to require more hours for teachers, more hours for administration, more building hours being rented from the host location. So those are some of the pros and cons of that. The second option that we've been looking at pretty closely is it's a homeschool, private school hybrid program, okay? And what this could look like would be a program that was, for instance, 2 days a week in person, maybe Tuesday, Thursday would be in person here at the building with quality instructors, classroom setting, etc. But then the kids would be 3 days a week, they would be homeschooled by a parent. And they would be sent home with the curriculum for their homeschool education that they would be taking on the other 3 days of the week in the home. So Monday, Wednesday, Friday in the home, Tuesday, Thursday here at the building in person is an option, a possibility. And the curriculum would be the same for in-person versus one there at home. Some of the real pros to this approach is that it provides homeschool kids. So, there's probably a couple different groups of people that are in the room tonight. Some of them are already homeschooling, and others are public schooling, but they're thinking about some potential alternatives. And so if you're a homeschooling family, one of the real pluses to this is obviously that your kids are going to get more social interaction. They're going to have that 2 days a week social interaction, peer-to-peer, that kind of thing, and we all know how important that is, especially after going through a whole, almost 2 years where it was hit and miss whether we were going to even have that, and that really took a toll on kids. I think we all saw that in our own kids. So the other plus side of this is that it gives homeschool parents a break 2 days a week, and some of you homeschool parents are saying amen. Yeah, cheering, yes, that's exciting. The third thing is that it would provide the curriculum for the homeschooling those other several days a week. If you've ever homeschooled, you know that probably one of the greatest tasks being a homeschool parent is trying to find the right curriculum. There's so many options out there, which is a good thing, but you can eventually get stuck in the paralysis of analysis. Have you ever been there? Where you're just like, there's just so many options, I don't even know where to start here. And I think the huge variety of curriculum is a good thing, but it can really be paralyzing for a parent who's looking at this for the first time going, I don't even know where to start. So that can be really challenging. The fourth pro here is that it's less expensive, obviously. You go a couple days a week. We'll get into some of the cost breakdowns here in a minute, but it's about half the price. You're going about half time, so it's about half the cost. Maybe even a little less than half the cost. So let's talk for a second about grade levels that we're considering. Now, for those of you that are taking notes, I can make my notes available to you, and that might free you up a little bit to just enjoy the evening instead of sweating bullets trying to take, you're going too fast, slow down. No, it's okay. I can share my notes with you. If you let me know you want them, I can definitely do that. So how to address this? Just to say it bluntly, we're looking at potentially beginning with a K through fifth grade program. And I know for a lot of us in the room, we're parents of older kids. I'm one of them, right? My youngest is 7th grade, and it breaks my heart to think that if I started something like this, my own kids wouldn't get to enjoy it. They would not get to reap the benefit. But I still feel passionate about the fact that I care about your kids, and I care about what their experience is and what their education is. And even if this is something my kids can't experience because that ship has sailed for them, they're too old now, I want to provide something for the other parents and the young parents that are coming into our community as well as the ones that are already here. And so I know that might be a bit of a downer for you right now, but if we start with K through 5, the idea would be that as those 5th graders graduate to 6th grade, we would add the 6th grade. And as they graduate to 7th grade, so if you have a 5th grader right now, it wouldn't be a 1 year and done necessarily sort of thing. We would potentially be adding grades at least up through the 8th grade and maybe further. We'll see what the Lord does with this whole thing, potentially if we are able to start something like this. So that's what's being considered at this point. Now, that's not to say that we don't want to hear from you if you have middle school students or above. I still want you to, there's going to be a survey we're going to give out. I still would love to hear from you in terms of kind of what your hopes and dreams are. And write that on your survey. We put a section at the bottom of that for comments. If you've got kids in some of those older grades, it doesn't hurt to throw that out there. Again, we're here to gauge interest, and if there's a lot of interest in some of the later grades, and it may well be that might even be the majority of the interest in the room is in the later grades. And I don't know how we would handle that, but we would want to know that as well. So let's talk about timeline here for just a second. Just to go straight to it, it would be extremely difficult, if not impossible, for us to have something in place for this fall of 2022. We would be looking most likely at the earliest to launch something like this would be fall of next year, 2023. And so that's kind of the timeline. But it depends partly on how much building space we would need and some of those questions that we would have. Certain classroom needs, there might have to be significant modifications to this building and or construction projects in the future in order to make something like this possible. We do have room on this campus. The church forefathers and foremothers of this congregation thought well in advance, and we have 10 acres here, so we've got lots of room, and we can build buildings. The Lord provides, and so that could happen, but we need to know some of those things before we move ahead into something like that. Accreditation. Some of you may be asking, is this school going to be accredited? I'm not an expert in this, first of all. I'm going to bring up somebody on stage who's a lot more of an expert in it than I am a little bit later in the presentation, but I'm definitely not an expert in this, but I'm told by people who are that accreditation is a function of private entities, not the state, okay? So it's not the state that's accrediting schools. These are private entities. And so a lot of public and private schools are not accredited. They're not accredited. And it's really more important. Accreditation is more important for the high school age than it is for the younger grades. The younger grades are a lot less important. It's not super important even for high school students. I did not have an accredited education growing up myself in my high school years, and I never had a college even blink an eye when I applied for those colleges. Now, I know that was, you're thinking, yeah, but you're old. Yeah, that was a long time ago. Yeah, so it was a while ago, but the truth is a lot of colleges don't require accreditation, and they don't even look at that closely. But that is where it matters more, is when the kids get up into high school, because that's where the diploma comes from and so forth. So college acceptance, that's where those accreditations become more important. So, but most colleges will take students from non-accredited schools, and they'll take homeschool students. And so most of the time it's not an issue. Accreditation is expensive. It is pretty expensive to go through that process, and it's very time consuming. And so if we were to plant a school here, start a school, once our students and our resources are up to speed and we have the opportunity to address the issue of accreditation, we would then go ahead and pursue that. But probably to begin with, it probably would not be accredited in those earliest months and years. So one of the other questions that sometimes comes up is our teacher-instructor qualifications. And so some of the qualifications for teaching, if you're a parent and you're thinking, what kind of teachers might this institution have? First of all, it would be important that they themselves are a follower of Christ. Secondly, that they're active in a local church in our community. Teaching certificates are not necessarily required. For a number of these types of Christian schools and hybrid programs, they call them academies, not schools, and they call the teachers, what do they call the teachers, Kerry? Instructors. They call them instructors, but they're not titled teachers because they're not certified. They don't have a certified teaching certificate. But if you've been around the education system long enough, you know that there's a lot of really quality teachers that don't have all of their certifications. In fact, sometimes some of the best ones don't have all of their certifications. So don't let that turn you off necessarily to that. So teaching certificates in Oregon require a master's degree, so minimum of 6 years of school. And that is not only expensive, but you have to, as you hire teachers, obviously the price of those teachers and hiring those teachers goes up the more education level that they have. So so it's expensive and so forth, but so at this school potentially not every teacher would have a teaching certificate. But again, it's not required by the state of Oregon either, that they have a teaching certificate. So, all right. Curriculum and subjects. We're looking at five subjects. The reading, writing, and arithmetic, as they say. So the basics are really important. We would kind of look at these 5 subjects that we'll put up on the screen here in just a second. Now, the first one is the most important. Know the Bible. Scripture says, what does it profit a man if he gains the whole world and forfeits his soul? And this is how I feel about all education, is that if God is the creator of everything, he is the master scientist, right? If he's the one who's sovereign over everything, he's the one that's writing history, right? And so he's obviously a mathematician. Look at the universe. It's so finely tuned to the nth degree, right? And so I think all truth begins and is sourced in our Creator, and he knows what's best. And so while the Bible is the first subject being taught, the person and work and amazing grace of Jesus is also front and center, and that is integrated into every subject throughout the day. And that's how we envision this, is that this is truly it's not just a sign on the road that says it's a Christian school, but Christ is actually being taught and talked about daily in every class, in every subject. Yes, you can even talk about Jesus with math, right? So those are all important. So period 1, the Bible. Period 2, potentially language arts. Period 3, history. Period 4 is everybody's favorite period. Put that up there, Aaron. Yeah, everybody likes that. Well, that one in recess, right? Period 4, math, and period 5, sciences. And I put an asterisk here behind period 6 because there could potentially be electives, and we'll talk about this, because this kind of bleeds into the next part of the conversation here. 6th period is electives, then those electives would have to be taught primarily by potentially people in the community, parents, and other community members who are interested in teaching some of these electives that they have specific interest in and expertise in. And those electives could be anything from computer stuff to archery to shop to welding to woodworking to what's that, sewing. Yeah, it could be as diverse as the gifts and talents of parents in this room, really. It really could be. So that kind of gets me excited too, because it gives an opportunity for parents to be involved in not only their kids' education, but in the education of other kids in the community. And that just builds the relationships between families at the school, families in the community, and we get to teach our kids some fun stuff. And quite frankly, most of us dads, we like that kind of thing. We like to play, right? So anyway, cool stuff. Moms too. So opportunities for parents, grandparents, community members, and that would only be limited, obviously, by the talents that are present and available to teach those things. One of the things also to keep in mind with after-school stuff and sports and so forth is that the public schools are still, at this moment at least, open to private school attendees as well as homeschool attendees coming to the school still for all of their athletics. So that is something, your kid could potentially leave here and be taken to the school for, sports practices and so forth. So also keep in mind Park and Rec has their after-school programs as well that are a possibility for different things that are going on there. So the host location obviously would be here at the church building. We obviously this is our internal concerns, but having to figure out how to configure the building and so forth. We just finished this space, this part of the facility back in I guess it was November of last year, and moved into this. So this opens up a lot of really cool opportunities for us as a church. But trying to configure the rest of the building so that classroom spaces are comfortable and appropriate is something we have to figure out on our end. So there's a couple of options for school oversight. I'm not going to get into too much detail here, but I'm going to throw out a couple of, one organization in particular. There's a church in Bend right now that is hosting a hybrid program. It's called Heart Academy. And Heart Academy is that hybrid program where it's Tuesday, Thursday in-person learning, and then Monday, Wednesday, Friday is homeschool learning. And they have a Heart Academy campus in Bend now, hosted at one of the churches. And we kind of saw that and we said, man, that'd be a pretty cool deal down here if we could get something like that going. Not only for the homeschool community, because it would provide that social interaction, but for parents who are kind of on the edge of like, I'm thinking about an alternative, but I don't think I can do the whole homeschool thing. And I'm not sure, I want my kids have more social opportunities and stuff like that, or maybe I need to work a couple days a week. this would provide something like that. And so if we went with an organization like Heart Academy, where it's already set up, the thing runs like a well-oiled machine, they administrate the whole thing. And if we went with something like that, our specific church family, our church leadership would have very little to do with the administration and oversight of the school. The school would be under the leadership of Heart Academy, and it would be underneath all of their bylaws, all of their structure, and so forth. We could go independent and do our own thing. In that case, the school would be underneath the umbrella of the leadership of our specific church, our church leadership. We would probably form a board over the school, and we would probably directly oversee that board. I don't know if you know the story of the YMCA, but it's not called the YMCA anymore. What does YMCA stand for? Young Men's Christian Association is what it used to be. It's now just called the Y. And everybody's scratching their head going, why? Why do they exist? It's a health club now, right? And so what it started out being this discipleship, mentoring place for inner city troubled young men, where they could come and they could get athletics and they could be coached and mentored. A lot of them did not have good father figures, etc. And so that's how it started out. But over time, the YMCA, had this thing that is called mission drift, where it just drifted from its mission, and eventually it dropped the Christian and the association and the young men, and it just became the Y. And we don't want that as a church. We want to be focused about what it is that what we're called to as a church, and what we feel called to in this community as far as the mission of what the school would be about. And so one of the reasons for having the church leadership help oversee that is not so we can have our hands in all the day-to-day stuff. It's to say we don't want the mission of the school to drift away from the focus that it's supposed to have. And so that would be an option there. With either model, whether we went with an organization that was already in place and just hosted it, or whether we actually were the overseeing body of that school, it would be a nonprofit. It'd be organized as a nonprofit entity. It would be a separate nonprofit from the church. So that's how that would work. So any excess funds from tuition, fees that were paid by parents and so forth, those would go to the school for supplies, for room upgrades, furniture, curriculum, things like that. So, class sizes. One of the reasons we're having this conversation tonight is because the minimum class size that we could have and break even in grades 1 through 5 would be about 12 students per class, okay? And what we would do is, obviously you got to shoot for that minimum, but then there would be a soft cap on the upper end of about 18 students per class. So if you have 18 students per class, you're in a healthy spot. Now, if, let's say, a new family moves to the community, they've got a first grader and a third grader. And the third grade class only has, the first grade class only has 12 kids, so obviously there's cap space there. But the third grade class has 18 kids. Well, we're not going to turn away, we're not going to turn away a family just because a class is right at that upper edge of the cap limit. So that's why we say kind of a soft cap at the top end of things, but a hard line kind of at the bottom of saying we got to have 12 or it just doesn't break even in order to pay the teachers and administration and all that stuff. So, all right, the moment we've all been waiting for, the cost. This is where you reach into your purse for nitro. Average cost for full-time K through 5 schools in our region is almost $7,400 per student. Now, that's regionally. Statewide, it doesn't vary much from that. It's pretty close to in that same price range. And when I say we, Dr. Irish, who I'll bring up here in a little bit, he's done some research across the state of Oregon, called a lot of private schools and Christian schools, and basically the cost of what it is in Central Oregon is pretty similar to what it is statewide. The low is down around the $6,000 mark per student per semester. Not per semester, excuse me, per school year. You guys are, and then you're really hitting the nitro. Give me another piece of that cake. Yeah, right? So part-time, so that's for full-time K through 5. Now if you add, if we start adding middle school, or someday we start adding high school, then those costs do go up a little bit for various reasons, but they usually go up $500 to $1,000 for middle school and for high school. So scholarship let's talk about part-time real quick here. So part-time schools, the cost for Heart Academy, which is the 2-day-a-week program, Tuesday, Thursday, is $3,000 per student per year. So $3,000, and it's $600 extra for curriculum. So each family would pay basically $3,600 per student. And there is, I think, a slight discount. Maybe somebody in the room who's Heart Academy savvy can help me out with this. There's a slight discount for multiple students. So if multiple students from one family go in, I think there is a slight discount for that. So that's the cost of the part-time situation. So you can see it's a little less than half for the part-time gig versus the full-time. So scholarship or discount opportunities. This is where churches come in. So whether you're part of High Lakes Christian or another church in the community, I would highly encourage you to go to your church leadership. If this becomes a reality, go to your church leadership and say, hey, could we start a scholarship fund through our church? Whether that's monies that are given through the general fund, or that's monies that people can specifically designate their giving towards that. What churches could do is churches could say, hey, if any of our families want to send their children, they can have their own set of criteria for who qualifies for that, or if they want to say anybody who wants to send a kid to the Christian school can do that, and we will partner with them and we'll help out financially. So this is where each local church could establish a scholarship fund to dole out at their discretion to make it more affordable for their own church members that are attending the school. Grandparents are a great resource as well. Got any grandparents in the room? Got a few of them. So grandparents are a great resource too. To say, hey, can this is a way that you grandparents, as you look around the culture today and you say, man, I really kind of, I want more for my grandkids, right? And so for a lot of you grandparents, I'm just going to tell you right now, put your money where your mouth is. So, and all the parents are going, yes, go preacher, right? So yeah, this is a great opportunity for grandparents to be able to help their grandkids, and I know you want to do that anyway. So I'm not twisting your arm to do something you don't already want to do. So there will be a spot on the survey. If you haven't seen the survey yet, there will be a spot on there that says, if I don't have kids who are, potentially student age for this potential school, could I give, or how much could I give annually, or per semester, or however that would work per month. So always looking for help there to help fund something like this. The other thing is that there's multiple student discounts, and most of those are relatively small, but they are something, and they do help out a little bit. So there's that as well. So tonight, I'm just coming to the end of this, so thank you for bearing with me. Here's what we need to know. We need to know as a church, is there enough interest in the community to support the school? One of the questions that's on your survey is going to ask you, how many other families in the community do you know that either have voiced interest in this, or would be interested in this, that you could share this idea with? And we want you to write in there the number, because that helps us gauge interest for the people who either weren't able to be here tonight or just didn't know about it, did not get the word. So, but that's a very important question on that survey, and I wanted to point that out. There's another question on the survey that says, I would be willing to volunteer at the school. That is not necessarily for a teacher position. That's not what we're talking about there. We're talking about more like those elective opportunities, those sixth period sort of opportunities where maybe you have a skill set that you would love to be able to teach kids. Obviously, background checks are required and all that other stuff. That's down the road, but that's what that question is kind of aimed at, is like for us to start building a list of different skill sets among the parents and community members and saying, okay, what kind of options do we have here potentially for sixth period type of electives that we could have? So we need to know, is there enough interest to support the school? Secondly, we need to know, if so, what format best serves the community? You parents, we want to know what format would best serve the community, a full-time model or a hybrid model? That's a very important question on the survey that we really want to hear from you on. Thirdly, and this is obviously a concern of our leadership, but is our facility adequate to meet the need to be able to put something like this together? So thank you for bearing with me through that. I'm going to bring up Dr. Kerry Irish. He is a American history professor at George Fox University. He is about to retire, and he has grandkids that are in the private school system, and I'll let him share a little bit more about himself, and then we're going to open this up for questions and answers. So,
hi. Can you hear me okay? Yep. Thank you. So it's a great privilege and pleasure to be here, and I hope I can answer some of your questions. I've been teaching at George Fox American History for 30 years almost, and I've got about one more year to go, just part-time, teaching a big lecture class for freshmen. And about a year ago, we moved to La Pine to retire. My wife is already retired. And we live out west of town and built a house out there, and we love La Pine.
Yeah.
And when we were young, so many years ago in the previous century, we lived in Bend in the 1970s and early 80s, and there were 16,000 people in Bend at that time. I remember the population sign. And we loved it, and we thought, well, we'll retire and we'll move to Bend. Unfortunately, the Bend we knew moved away. So we found something that was still in Central Oregon that fit our needs and our desires, and so we're glad to be here in La Pine. And I do have a grandson who is attending C.S. Lewis Academy, Christian school in Newberg, Oregon, where George Fox is. And his parents, my daughter and her husband, are interested in moving to the La Pine area, so this is last summer, I started looking around and found out there was no Christian school in La Pine. And so I started thinking. And so the process of thinking about that and finding a church to go to, we started attending High Lakes about a year ago, just about the time of the Frontier Days, was at that service.
Wow.
And so a few months ago, Ben and I sat down with his wife and my wife, and we got to know each other, and started talking about a Christian school. And there were other meetings with leaders of the church and so forth, and so we end up here tonight. Mm-hmm. So this is an answer to prayer. Not just my prayer, but prayers of the entire church, I think, many people in this community. And I do pray that we find our way forward from here so that we can create the school that best serves the needs of the people of La Pine. Mm-hmm. And so answering that question, that a 2-day format, 5-day format, that's crucial. That's one of the key pieces for us to know how to proceed. And it doesn't mean that what we do in the next year or two is going to be absolutely the way it's going to be for the next 10 or 20 years, but it's a starting place. So having said all that, I just want to give you the opportunity to ask questions. So if you have any questions on your mind about what this will look like, how we'll teach, what we're going to do, what we hope to accomplish, Now's a good time. Yes. Security is a great question, and the answer is not really. We're probably not there yet. We're definitely not there yet. Do you have any comments on security, Ben?
I would say it's not being considered right now because we're not far enough down the road to consider that yet. But obviously, safety is always a number one concern.
Yeah, I believe that the structure of the building and such, we would have to make sure that the building is secure.
Yeah,
and, you know, this is all about parents, right? And if parents wanted to help us secure the building, then we would be open to that.
Absolutely. Yeah.
And this also depends on the model that we choose. Ben talked about Heart Academy. Heart Academy's it's a Heart Christian Academy, by the way, and it's a very Christ-centered program. But they run the program. They would just be paying High Lakes Church rent. And so that would be then a subject that we wouldn't have much to do with, security or any other aspect of the school. Mm-hmm. Now that doesn't mean that we couldn't do a 2-day program and do it ourselves. So those are the decisions that we're trying to make here tonight or as a result of the survey tonight.
Yeah.
Yes?
Let's say we started with the Heart Academy. Did we ever move away from them? Or do we always have to stay with the ones we partner with?
I don't know the answer to that question. I'm sure there'd be a contract, a lease. And I don't know what they require, whether it's a 1-year or a 3-year or whatever that would be. But it wouldn't be something that we would have to, you know, it wouldn't be indefinite. So there would be a time factor there. Okay?
Starting with them could start this program sooner than trying to get all of our own stuff in order.
It would absolutely be easier in that sense.
Yeah.
In fact, the first thing we would do if Heart Academy was the choice is we would have to ask them if they're interested in the Pine. And they would make that decision and then work out the financial details and so forth. Okay.
Is Heart Academy currently just a K-5 grade, or does it include higher grades?
I believe they have higher grades. Yeah. Yes.
Could you repeat the question so people can hear what they're asking?
All right. I'll try to remember to do that. The question here was, does Heart Academy have grades beyond 5th grade? And the answer was, I believe they do, but I'm not exactly sure on that. If somebody knows the answer to a question, don't hesitate to answer it.
Yeah.
Excuse me. Hi, I'm Susan Allen. I used to run Heart Academy. So they had high school, and then we stopped when I took it over. And currently they are reinstating the high school. I'm not sure how it's going to go, but I'm actually going down there in a couple weeks to go visit and participate in some activities.
Thank you for speaking up. I'm glad you're here tonight. I was hoping you would be.
And I apologize. I thought it was 7. That's what I was on my agenda.
Okay. Yes.
That was going to be my thing, a little bit more of a comment that because I teach in the school district, and I know Ben can attest to this, it's the older kids that are being impacted by the agendas that are coming out.
Right.
I'm dealing with it just this very week at my own school with my own 7th grade daughter, and I think it would be beneficial to really consider even just a middle school, high school co-op, or
Okay.
maybe the part-time thing, because
Yeah.
our kids are the ones that they're shoving it down their throats, not necessarily the K-5.
Right.
Yeah. Good point.
Okay.
Good point. Yeah. And I don't think a co-op is out of the question. I think there's other homeschool parents in this room that can speak to this a lot more educated than I can, but I believe there's already some of those going on. Is there anybody in the room that can speak to that in terms of what current co-ops exist in La Pine? Yeah, Susan?
That's where Conversations takes place in Bend. I don't know if any of you are fine, other than maybe some get-togethers like on Facebook type of thing.
It's more of a Facebook presence in La Pine, and most of those happen in Bend. Is that what you're saying? Okay.
That's where Conversations is being run, and they are a supplemental thing, and they're open to Bend.
Gotcha. Darlene?
I know that there is an Oregon Family Schools
Yes.
that is a homeschool / parent co-op kind of thing. Here in La Pine, they meet at the Family Christian Church, I think, right across the street here on
Okay. Okay.
Thursdays.
Okay.
But I don't know if they have high school. I know it is K through 5th for sure.
I believe it's up through 8th grade, if I'm not mistaken. Yeah. So there is, what Darlene's saying is there is a charter school, an online charter school called Oregon Family Schools, and they have a 1 day a week in-person instruction that takes place. Is it across the street?
It's across the street at that family, the one on the right side.
So yes, I'll let you, sorry, didn't mean to step in there. Yeah. Get date.
What I'm wondering about, do you have a committee, a board, any kind of anything going on right now where people are sitting down and brainstorming multiple ideas and bouncing them off each other?
I think that's best.
Not an official one, but our church elders, the church leadership, has been having this conversation for several months now. And my conversation with Dr. Irish was actually independent of that conversation. He actually asked me specifically, is there anything in the works for a Christian school with the church or in the community? And I said, funny you should ask. And so I kind of started an unofficial interested parties that had not only an interest in the Christian school, but had maybe some experience with it, some expertise, and a skill set that might be able to help us and might even be potential board members down the road. And so I asked Dr. Irish to come and talk to our church leadership because we were still in the very formative stages of this conversation. And a lot of the research that we have on the screen tonight has actually come from him and has come out of those conversations that we've had with him over the last 6 months. And so the answer to the question is we don't have an official one yet, but if you take the survey and you want to put your name down in the comments as someone who is interested, please state your qualifications for that and your interest in that as well, and that would be hugely helpful to us. That reminds me of another thing that's on the survey. One of the things that's on the survey is, are you interested in a teaching job? And so I know I'm not going to rat anybody out, but I know there's a number of educators in the room right now who are Christians and for various reasons are looking for potential other opportunities to teach. And we want to know who you are. If you're here tonight, make sure you mark that on your survey. We're not going to go publish that anywhere, so don't worry. We're not going to rat you out with your current employers or anything like that. But we do want to know who you are because obviously if we get something like this going, we need teachers. So yeah, interested teachers, if you're interested in potentially being a part of helping us put something like this together, whether it's an official board or just an advisory team that helps us kind of get the information we need and get this thing up off the ground, then great.
Yeah, it kind of depends on whether we go with the Hart Christian Academy model or not.
Yeah.
Someone else? I can barely see out there. Those lights are bright. How do you do that?
Now you know what I deal with every Sunday. There's some people I'd rather not see on Sundays, but for the most part, it's a debt. No, I'm just kidding.
Yes?
You know if the Heart Academy, are they pretty successful in the Bend area? And are they growing? Or?
I believe Heart Academy is quite successful. Their Bend school is not going to open until this fall, so they're just getting that going. But there are a number of campuses in California, and they have some in the Midwest. It's a growing company. And I've looked at their website and some of their curriculum and so forth. I've talked to their principal in Bend in person for an hour or so. And he's a very impressive Christian man. So that's about, I think it's a viable alternative. But again, they have to decide they want us too.
Yeah. Well, and I think the convenience or the willingness of the interested parents is a huge question mark in our mind because it is. I mean, it's part-time homeschooling. So there has to be that willingness to commit to that. So, got a question in the back there.
Yes.
I was just curious, if you guys decide to do the full-time, would you offer the part-time to students, or would it be only full-time?
I thought about that. I have a hard time figuring out how the classrooms we have could accommodate a Monday through Friday class, and then on Tuesdays and Thursdays, have, let's say, 50% more students in the classroom, just for those days. And then the teacher's teaching every day, but somehow then she has to, or he has to, accommodate that student that's only there on Tuesdays and Thursdays. That seems to me a very difficult problem. I'm not saying it's insurmountable, but it does seem to be a pretty difficult thing to overcome.
Good questions.
Yep.
Keep them coming. Got a question here in the purple.
Christy, I never did, when we moved out here, just at a river, I could never find a co-op in our area. So if it is gonna take a long time, I would, but that's a huge need, is if it's gonna take longer to put the school together, to have a place and, facilitate a co-op for the school.
So you're looking for a co-op to help you with your children in the meantime?
Yeah.
Okay? So you're wearing a purple sweatshirt with the word blessed, and I think there's some people out here that might help you out. I don't know how to recommend that, but I'm sure there are people here who will.
Yep.
Don't mob her now.
And that's something I'm interested in as well, but I don't want to step on other turf potentially that might be already happening in the community, and I don't think it's important to reinvent the wheel if somebody else is already doing it in the community. I don't necessarily want to duplicate that. So I've had a little bit of difficulty figuring out what is available in the community for that. And it may be because there isn't anything, or it may be just because it's top secret and they could tell me, but they'd have to kill me. I don't know. So, yeah.
Could be.
Maybe that's why we don't know.
Yeah.
So, other questions?
Yes.
As far as payments are concerned, I know when my kids went to private school before, they allowed you to pay it for, instead of 9 months that they're in school, you could pay it for 10, or they had it worked out to where you could pay it over the 12 months, but that means you're paying until the kid graduates, basically.
Right.
So would that be a possibility?
I think anything like that is a possibility. The school that I'm most familiar with, I'm on the board at C.S. Lewis Academy. I've been on the board for the last year, and they have models like that too. A little discount if you pay everything up front, but you can pay by the month if you like.
But in the back.
What about fundraisers to help offset the cost for families that can help volunteer somewhere or raise money, but couldn't necessarily afford all of that?
Yeah, fundraisers will be an absolute essential part of this program on a yearly basis. Again, C.S. Lewis Academy has an auction that I attended just a few weeks ago. They raised $50,000 at that auction. Now that's Newburgh, and that's a town of 25,000 plus, but fundraisers are essential. There are programs that we can apply to for grants. George Fox University has just announced a program that will help private schools, private Christian schools, and they're willing to give a certain amount of dollars to those who apply to that program. And so I don't know, it'll depend on where we go from here, but there are programs like that. The Murdoch Foundation also supplies money for worthy causes.
Yeah.
So there's any number of ways that we might raise money to help get us started.
Yeah.
And then continue through the years as well.
It sounds like the question you're asking has specifically to do with fundraisers for the purpose of scholarshiping students, correct?
To help cut down that overall cost.
Yeah, no, that makes sense.
There's a lot of people that I've talked to about this particular private school opening up in Bend, and the biggest thing that I hear out of their mouth is, but who can afford it?
Mm-hmm.
So my thought is there going to be fundraising with that mindset in mind?
We will explore every opportunity, I think I can say, to increase the outside funds, to take the pressure off the parents to pay for this. But that said, I don't know of any school that doesn't have an absolute need, or where the parents aren't paying the vast majority of the bill. So if you want to send your child to a Christian school, it does take a lifestyle adjustment. There's no doubt about this. Heart Academy, $3,000 plus the curriculum. That's at pretty much the low end of what you can expect. And not too many people can just turn right around and write a check for 2 or 3 kids or something like that. It's going to take a lifestyle adjustment and some planning in order to do this. It's a commitment.
Yeah.
And that's why we specifically ask grandparents and other interested people to come to this meeting tonight, because the parents, frankly, are going to need some help to do this.
Absolutely.
Most of them.
Yeah. Yeah.
But, yes,
Is there going to also be a registration fee or an enrollment fee? Because I know some private schools do require that on top of the tuition and on top of the books.
it's generally a fairly small amount, $50 or so. There'll probably be something like that. When I talked to the principal at Hart Christian Academy in Bend, he mentioned that, and he said the reason for it was that there's substantial work involved in getting somebody enrolled, and they had to have the fee in order so that their time wasn't being wasted by people who weren't serious. So, yes, there'll probably be a fee of that kind. Yes, Susan.
Have you guys talked about the possibility of homeschooling full-time and just having some social type of things that were set up where people would get together once a month or once a week or something for social type of activities and parent involvement and any of that kind of ideas?
We talked about that?
I didn't hear the whole question. I'm sorry. Can you?
Yeah,
Talking about that homeschooling full-time, parents homeschooling full-time, but setting up some kind of social type of support. I think that's what she was talking, kind of the co-op idea, but is that something that's on the table or considering?
It would definitely be considered. I would have to do a little bit more research as far as what's actually here in Lapine already, so we're not duplicating. But if there's a need for it, we're definitely open to that. Absolutely. Yeah. Yep. Love to. If you can put that in your comment section too in the survey, that would also help us to know that, hey, there's folks that are currently homeschooling that are saying we can't really find anything locally, and we want to maybe help start something. We would be open to hosting something like that potentially. So we have the space for it, and that would be something that would be really beneficial, I think. So.
Any other questions?
Oh, go ahead.
If you do the 2-day-a-week part-time, does the Heart Academy supply like the rest of the curriculum for the homeschooling program and kind of come alongside the parents like working with their kids the other 3 days a week?
So the question is, if you do the 2-day-a-week model using the Hart Christian Academy curriculum, does the Monday, Wednesday, Friday aspect of the curriculum meld in with the Tuesday, Thursday in class? And the answer is absolutely yes. So the parents are teaching the same curriculum that the teachers are teaching in all subject matter. And I should say that in the Hart Academy program, it's the 5 periods that you saw up on the screen. The 6th period is our idea of how we would provide the opportunity to, say, have music or art or shop or archery or the things that we were talking about earlier. So we think that's a nice add-on. That gives parents the opportunity then to share with the students in an 8-week program or a semester-long program some specialty or special interest that they have. And the students and parents then can decide, because we can run any number of those programs after school. There might be 2 or 3 electives to choose from in any given semester, and the parents and children can decide what they want to do for one semester, switch to something else for the next semester. By the time you got through going through this program, students could have had all kinds of different experiences in that 6th period.
Yeah, that's good.
With the hybrid, right now for homeschool, the state requires, we have to do, to hire someone to do a state test at the end of like 3rd grade and at certain grades. Is that still something that is required when you're doing a hybrid thing like?
Whether it's required or not, my opinion is it's something we would want to do. We want to demonstrate that our kids in this school were as good or better at the various grade levels than what's taking place in the public school. So,
Is that going to be done like at the school, or is that something the parent still has to go find someone higher to do the test?
again, if it were me, and this is something that to be decided down the road, but I'd want to do it as part of the school day. Yeah.
Through HART, we register as a good homeschool. So it would then deal with ESD.
We're in Southern,
So you would register in Clinton County and then still be tested.
So Heather, so we can repeat that because a lot of people can't hear what you're saying.
HART isn't in itself a school. So
That's
you
right.
still have to register through the ESD as a homeschooler. You do your testing and opting out and all of that through that.
Okay.
Thank you.
Thank you for sharing that.
Yeah. It's a detail I wasn't aware of.
Yeah.
I knew there wasn't a school, that's why they named it an academy, so they don't have to deal with certain legalities, but thank you for that detail.
Yeah. Things are kind of winding down a little bit here. What's that? I can't see you back there in the back. I'm sorry. Go ahead, Susan.
HART always, just like I said, I used to run it. We always had testing every year, and there was times that earlier was SAT, like I don't know if they're currently using it, but that was part of our program, was to offer the standardized testing.
Okay.
Great.
At the academy site, or do we have to go to wherever the state said no?
No, they have it at the site, the teachers would.
So they come here to our site, test our kids here.
I'm sorry?
The state testing you're talking about.
No, it's not the state's testing. I saw, when I looked online, because I sent Ben something, when I was looking at the Oregon, it's OHEM, whatever that is, Oregon Home Educators Network, they had a link to some testing resources that you could use, and it just said you had to do testing. You didn't have to submit it to anybody. If they asked you to submit it, then you submit it.
Okay.
So you could kind of, it was that kind of scenario. So you just had to have proof that you did it, and then at some point, if there was issues, you submitted it.
All right.
Bottom line is, we would want our kids in this school to outperform the public schools in terms of their academics. At the same time, they would have a Christ-centered education in every subject.
Yes. Yep. Yep. Two more quick things. First of all, there's still time to eat cake. Secondly, this session, Aaron, can you speak to where they can find this session? Okay, this is very important. Can we link, Aaron? Can we link the survey to the comment section in YouTube? Okay, that's what we're going to try to do, okay? So here's what we're going to do. We are going to attempt, and when I say we, I mean Aaron is going to attempt. I'm his boss, so Aaron is going to attempt to upload the survey to the comment section in the YouTube for this session. So if you have friends, neighbors, other interested parties that weren't able to be here tonight, you can send them the YouTube link for this. We will post that on the What's Happening in Lapine Facebook page, as well as our own church, High Lakes Christian Church Facebook page. So a couple different places you'll be able to find that link. You can send that on to them, and we would love to see their surveys if we can figure out how to make that digital and completely online so that they would also be able to submit this exact survey that we've given you. Okay? Yeah.
There was a survey online recently asking about a Christian school coming to Lapine. Was that your survey?
It was. But it wasn't detailed like this. It was just basically kind of like, are you interested in, like, there's going to be a meeting at this date. So So this is more detailed. It's front and back. So how many of you got a survey? Did everybody get a survey? Okay, everybody got a survey that wants one? Okay, so there's no need for both parents to fill this out. That will skew the numbers if you do. So please just one parent per family fill this out. If you have specific information from both parents, like you're both willing to volunteer, you can handwrite that in there. We will see that. It's not being machine sorted or anything. We're just going to look at these with normal human eyes. So, yeah.
And could you link it to an email to the church and they can put the survey to the church itself in an email form?
So you're asking if we could email out the survey?
No, if you put the survey on the YouTube, couldn't you have your email address to send the survey back to?
Oh, yeah, good point. Good point, yes.
Versus this out there?
Do you hear that, Aaron? She said, when you put the survey, if you put it in the YouTube link, then also make sure that you have an email address where they would email that survey back. So, yeah. Okay, thank you for that. All right. We got more people.
Have you thought about having this available at all the churches around here?
I hadn't considered that, Jackie. But if you'd like to take them to the churches and you can hog tie the pastors and all of that. We actually have at least one other pastor in the room right now, but yeah. Right. The goal is not stealing sheep from other churches. That is not what we're about here. And those of you that are part of High Lakes, you know that's not what we're about. So we're not about that, but obviously the appeal of the school it goes beyond obviously High Lakes Christian Church. This is not about our church as a church. It's about the cause of Christ, about the gospel. It's about discipling children and making sure they get the best education they possibly can. And across the board, doesn't matter what church you go to in the community, we want that for every young person. So that's really what we're about here. So were you waving your hands, Lynn, because you had something? Oh, you were just pointing out that they were waving their hands. Okay, good. All right. So if you would fill those surveys out for us, please. If you need writing utensils or anything, there is a basket on the very edge of the cake table over there. Make sure you grab a piece of cake for the road and drop your survey in the basket. Thank you all so much for being here tonight.